broadcast it out there. We are now streaming live on YouTube. So know that while it's just the four of us in here, and Brian for just a little bit longer in the background, you know, it can be just about everyone out there watching us out on YouTube. So, Jessica, do we know if, because I think Gary, you and Nancy are both members of the committee, right?
Yep.
And so one of you gets to chair. I don't know if either of you has a preference. Because it's not like one of you is a vice, right, or an officer to say, hey, you're definitely the one. Anyone have an inclination?
It's our last meeting, Gary. You want to be the leader?
Nancy, I don't want to. Come on, I don't want to steal your talents here. You're very talented. I don't mind being vice. I'm not in this for ego.
All right. Well, let's call the meeting to order and get going here.
Okay.
Okay. So, do I take roll call?
I think the first step is to take roll call.
Okay. Mrs. Felton?
I am here.
Mr. Michaels?
Present.
Mr. Beecher?
I'm not a member, but I am here.
Okay. Okay. And then who's not accounted for is Mr. Cross and Mr. Raymond.
They're both absent, correct?
Okay.
Yeah. So now we've done that. The next thing we would probably do would be the approval of the minutes.
I didn't receive a copy of the minutes.
Oh, did you not get the email that was sent out?
I don't believe I did.
Okay, I sent an email to njfelton@msn.com.
That should have I should have received that. When was that?
On Friday past week at about 10:30 p.m. I can resend it right now if you would like.
Okay.
Okay, I'll forward you one that I sent to John where the PDFs were attached to the email. And then that way you just click on the PDF and open it.
If it was sent, I certainly missed it. I apologize if that were the case.
Okay, let me see. So, this might take me a while.
Let me grab another computer and I'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jessica, what time did you send me that? Same time on Friday, 10:30?
Yes. Did you get it?
I'm looking. Hold on.
I know Luke got it. I sent everybody at the same time and Luke was real quick to respond.
Yeah, okay, right, right, what I'm looking at, okay.
Okay.
Gary, did you get those meeting minutes?
Yeah, it's a link in a message, basically. Are you able
Okay.
to, I received it about 10:25 p.m. on Friday the 17th. Try 8 p.m.
All right, hang on a second.
So what Jessica did was she has a hyperlink in the message.
Okay, well, I didn't pick up on that. I'm sorry. I apologize, guys. Gary, did you see anything problematic with the minutes?
No, I already read it. It looks pretty much.
All right, then I will defer to your, I'll read it later, but I'll defer to your judgment on that.
Okay, thank you. And just to refresh, that was the meeting where we were talking about the various measures at the various schools. Do you recall that? We were going from Adam to Elvin. We were talking about the various Measure D funds that remain. You had some questions about some of the schools.
Yeah,
Anyway, so I appreciate all the pictures, Matt. It looks very,
yeah, those are great. But boy, seeing it in person today was amazing.
you were there?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go next week, Gary. We'll catch you.
Yeah, so I was on a call this morning.
Yeah, it sounded important. I'm glad you were able to make it. I didn't want to certainly take you from it. And we'll get you in there next week. We have a couple of board members that also want to go on the school board. So, and a couple of the cabinet managers will be there as well. So Gary, if you're okay with the minutes, and Nancy, you're okay with Gary being.
Yeah,
okay
I am. So let's go forth.
Gary could make a motion and you could second.
No.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
All right.
So the next thing on the agenda is the review of the project spending. So in that same email, there was a detailed listing that I've been sending each time we're preparing for a meeting, so that you actually have the granular detail of what we're actually spending the money on. So I don't know, Jessica, did you get a chance to email that to Nancy again, the PDFs?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. I'm sorry I missed it the first time.
Not a worry. There's just a few emails that each of us get every day, and
Yes.
you certainly can't read all of them.
Right. Okay.
So as I usually do, I have a PowerPoint that I can share my screen and just kind of walk you through that has essentially some of the pictures and the photo reports that I've been sending to you each time I get them. And then kind of summarizes the total expenditures so far. That may help us kind of see where we've come, and then any questions you might have between that. Sound good?
Okay. Sounds good.
Let me see if I can do this. Can you see my screen?
Absolutely.
Great.
Certainly can.
All right. So we did this part at the top, looking at the expenditure reports that are in your packet. What you see is the expenditures through June 30th of 2020. We have spent 99.9% of the funds that will be made available through the bond project. The one thing that is still kind of the loose end related to spending Measure T resources is that we haven't received our interest allocation from the county treasurer's office for the period from April to June 30th, because it's only July the 23rd. So we'll get that number this week or next week, and then we'll identify the expenditures from last month, from June of 2020, that will cover those interest earnings and allocate those expenditures into the bond fund, just so we can fully expend those funds during the fiscal year June 30, 2020.
Okay.
The strategy behind that is it's not going to be much. I want to say it's going to be about $15,000, maybe 25. 15.
What?
Yeah. 15,000. I don't think it will be as much as 20 or 23, but that would be on the outer edge. The reason being is if the district does have expenditures in the fiscal year of 2020, 2021, then I have to pay for a whole nother specific
Audit.
procedures audit, right?
Yeah.
and prepare another report to the community and go through that whole process. And since it doesn't change the outcome of building the school, I figured it's just a better strategy to get that all expended during the 2019-2020 fiscal year.
Yes.
So I did provide you with a spreadsheet. It looks like this, spending through June 30 of 2020. If you go down to the bottom, you can actually see that we have spent so far $45,714,767 of an estimated $45 million. So we actually have overexpended. And that's because of the interest earnings that I described to you. Those are our interest earnings since we started receiving proceeds. But the estimated allocations when it came to determining project distribution, that didn't include interest earnings. It was just what's the gross general obligation bond amount? Here's how we're going to distribute projects. So that's why it actually here looks like we spent more funds than we had available.
Yes.
Making sense?
Yes.
So we have spent just over the $100,000 that were made available. The Measure T new school, Linden Elementary School, consumed most of those funds. So we do have other projects that are out there that were important as we campaigned for Measure T. And those priorities haven't changed. Those projects haven't changed, but we're going to have to determine based on priorities and what alternative resources are available to us when we pull the trigger on those projects. But because they'll be using other district resources and not Measure T resources, it won't necessarily fall under the review or purview of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. But I just
Right.
want to share that with you so you know that the project list was real when we made it. Those are projects and priorities. We just need to determine when and where they fit. So it's hard to believe that in March of 2019, this is what the new school looked like. And I can remember us talking about the footings as they were being dug, how massive they were.
I don't think I've seen that picture before, that
Yeah.
particular one.
This
That's
one
pretty
here,
dramatic.
yeah, so this is underneath the two-story building, the two-story classroom building, close to the corner of the street. So down in this
Amazing.
area, must be that one. But yeah, that's quite a dig.
Yeah, you can get a little perspective from the 6-foot poles on the fence.
Yep. And all that filled in with concrete and rebar. That school is going to really stick to the ground. I can tell you that. So some of the plumbing work that was going in May, this was April, May, June. We brought some of the steel on site. They loaded up the crane, started assembling the crane over here in the corner. July, so this is a year ago. A year ago, they started hanging the steel for the two-story building. By the end of August, they were putting in the panels for the floor and for the roof and working on the steel for the multi-purpose room. That was the end of August. So in September, we hung the last beam. And you both were able to attend that? Is that?
Yes.
Gary, were you there?
And
Awesome.
I think we're all together, yeah.
Yep, awesome. And then
And
John
was on the phone.
John, I think it was on Maggie's phone or Kristen's phone over here somewhere.
Christian's phone, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
So here we are in October. They're starting to get in some of the sheetrock on the outside. Looks like they've got some of the curbing for the HVAC units. By November, looks like they've loaded the HVAC units. And I shared the video of the helicopter dropping the HVAC units down, right? You guys got to see that? That was awesome.
Not remembering that.
You didn't see it?
I don't
I'll
think I
send it.
did. But at any rate, I can imagine.
I'll find it.
It was Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rambo were on that helicopter, and they were throwing metal beams. You didn't see that?
I
Boy,
tell
it's
you what,
impressive.
it was impressive how quickly the helicopter would pick up a unit off of the ground and then have it centered and set on the roof and then be on its way down to get another unit.
Wow.
Very, very professional job. So here we are in December, getting more of the sheetrock and the siding on the outside.
Wrapping it up.
Wrapping it up. That's right, trying to dry in before the rain. We're working on some of the curbing out here in the play spaces in January. And look at that change from January to February. We're starting to really dry it in. We've got siding going in. We're getting the storefronts in to hold the windows. In March, believe that, Nancy, that 4 months ago, this was the school?
Yes.
The school you were walking on today?
Yes. It's amazing.
And then April, we continue to make progress. May, we're getting a lot of our hardscape in. June, at this point, you can see that they'd moved the construction trailers from
Yes.
the east side to where we are now on the north side. So now, Gary, as Nancy learned today, the entrance to the construction site is now over in this area.
Yeah, I tried to park where we were before and didn't work.
No, well, I mean, you got to park there. There actually was plenty of parking down in that.
Yeah, there was plenty. Yeah. Over on this side, there wasn't so much. I even had to parallel park. The workman gave me a hand for my good job, though.
Nice work. And then this is where we are right now. This is the last report I received. You can see there is actually a concrete truck on the site still, but the playground equipment has been installed. The fall protection hasn't, but the equipment itself is installed. A lot of, you can see here and here are the outdoor learning areas where we've got kind of stadium seating outside for the students. And then they're still working on all of the forms that will go in place so that they can put concrete down for those stadium stairs that we're putting along the library. I was actually, Gary, the incoming principal for the school was there today, and she was talking about communicating with the contractor about making sure that she gets her furniture in there quickly and starts using her office at the school site right away. So we're hoping that can happen really quickly. So that is as of today. I think actually they have, I think they do have blacktop down on this side already. So from this picture, which is just a week old, they've already laid down the blacktop and are driving around on this surface over here. So as Nancy mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, as we were getting ready to start, we are really winding down the activities of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. As we've talked about in each of our meetings, the purpose of the committee is to provide transparency and oversight to the transactions to make sure that the funds are spent on the projects as approved by the voters. And we have done so, and we have consumed all of those resources. The one thing that is still out there is the final audit report and the final annual report to the community. So as we scheduled this meeting, and we are hoping, you know, we can do this one meeting, have that oversight and transparency made available to the public. There are still those two documents. So I ask you, Gary and Nancy, if you're interested in having one more meeting to review those documents, or if you want that to be handled between me and President Raymond and maybe send you an email to look at, I'm fine either way. I mean, in my mind, the procedure would be to schedule one more meeting for that review and make it formal. But you know,
I think in the intent of our committee would be less than fulfilled if we didn't have a meeting on that.
Mhm.
We need to see the final report. We need to get that report out to the public.
I agree. I appreciate that perspective.
Absolutely.
Gary, you see it the same way?
And yeah, absolutely. I thought that would be the keg party as well. Yeah, no, I'm kidding around. I totally agree. That's
Mhm.
well.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that, and we'll get that scheduled shortly. We'll want to tie in with Mr. Cross and Mr. Raymond and make sure that we find a time that works for each of us, and have it off. It's going to have to be likely in maybe the third week in December at the earliest, and potentially in January, just because our auditors won't have a report available and signed until then.
That's going to be your limiting factor right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll
So you anticipate the auditor's report done when?
The auditor's report will be presented to the school board at our December meeting. So I don't know what that is on our calendar. It's usually somewhere right the 12th to the 15th, somewhere in there.
Yeah, early in the month.
Yeah. And so we wouldn't really want to, I wouldn't really want to schedule the Citizens Bond Oversight's Committee's acceptance of the audit report until the board has accepted that audit report.
Okay, so you're looking at probably the day after the December board meeting.
Yeah.
That's been our pattern.
Mhm.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
I think I see Jessica looking at her calendar to find out when.
Yes. Let's see, the board meeting is scheduled for December 9th. Oh, no, wait, not the 9th. Sorry, that's when my titles are due. The 16th, the organizational board meeting, December 16th.
Okay, so we're looking at the 17th.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I doubt that any of us will be traveling,
True.
unfortunately.
And we did a great job connecting via Zoom. So thank you
Yes.
for your patience as we determine what links work for what. So that worked out well, and that makes it possible to get John included, for sure from afar. So that works really well as well. But
Is John back in Illinois?
he's still in Illinois. Yeah, he's and I think that's where he is today, is somewhere in Illinois. I'm not really sure. But I know that where he was planning on staying was kind of away from the beaten path, and he didn't really plan on having cell phone service.
All right.
So you've seen the expenditures, and you have seen some of the pictures. What questions can I answer about the new school or the upcoming school year that you might have?
Well, certainly, you're still waiting on Sacramento for direction, aren't you? Or has that come through?
So we did receive some direction from Sacramento. The governor laid out criteria for districts to follow when they open. That was more direct and specific than we had received in guidelines prior. And then he also laid out a plan for when districts would be able to open, with the big limited, the limiting factor being that you had to be, a county has to be off the state watch list for 14 days before schools can open.
Okay.
So what I know of right now is that there are 33 counties out of 58 on that watch list. So most counties most schools in most counties will not be able to open at the beginning of the school year. There are several that will, obviously. But Santa Barbara County is on the watch list, and so the Santa Maria Bonita School District will not be able to open with in-person instruction this fall, and so we'll be opening with distance learning. There is an exception that has several criteria connected to it. If you're an elementary school district, you can apply for a waiver and open for in-person instruction. We haven't researched that our ability to qualify for that waiver at this point, and we're not really prepared to determine if we're qualified. What we're preparing for is to open with distance learning for the new school year.
Has there been any thought to perhaps doing a half and half? Some kids returning so that you can provide the distance requirements and others doing the at home?
For sure. So one of the things that was really early on in this process was, I believe it was San Diego Unified and San Diego County each started talking about ways they might be able to open the school year. And they started talking about a model like that way back then. And so what we put together, we actually took to the school board last night, was a reentry plan. You know, it's not a reopening plan because schools never closed. Teachers never stopped teaching students. But it's a reentry plan to reenter our buildings with students. And the way that plan was structured was based on 3 models. The first model would be full brick and mortar, every student, every day. The second model was no students on campus, all distance learning. And the third model was in between, which was kind of like what you described. So a hybrid model where half the students might be on campus a number of days, and then the other half might be on campus a number of days, just to cut down on the number of students who are on campus and reduce the potential exposure, and to create maximize the potential for social distancing between students. So all of those models were presented to the board last night for consideration, so that wherever we're at, whether we're in full distance learning or full brick and mortar or somewhere in between, the board knows what that's going to look like in general, right? So that's exactly what we took to the school board. The one thing that we talked about that we think is certain is that we're not going to go from full distance learning where we are today to full brick and mortar, right? There's going to be some hybrid in between where we are now and where
I think that's very prudent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the things they talked about as being the things we talked about as being most concerning, number one would be to make sure that we have adequate social distancing, that we have access to proper hygiene and sanitation. So hand sanitizer, hand washing, hand soap, so that we can keep our students and our staff safe. And where that gets incredibly challenging is in restrooms, in common areas, at arrival and dismissal, and on school buses. Those are very challenging pieces to that puzzle, and being required to open and distance learning is providing us with a window of opportunity to really think those things through and involve the right people in the discussion. So that's what we're going to do with this opportunity we have between now and some form of welcoming students back to campus, is to make sure that we provide the right guidelines for social distancing, and that we have the right plan for actively screening students when they return to campus. We're already actively screening employees when they come to work each day, taking their temperature and asking them about symptoms that they may have, so that we keep the workplace safe. We're going to have to expand that from, the probably 300 employees who are reporting to work today at each of our campuses to several thousand when we return students, and several hundred when we return teachers. But that's going to be a big challenge, and it's going to be a critical step in keeping the workplace and the learning place safe.
How's the budget look for more maintenance and sanitizing supplies? You're going to have more janitorial maintenance people?
So
Maintenance in not structural, but I
right,
guess janitorial is more what I was leaning towards.
right, sure. So as far as I would say, we'll generalize facilities personnel, right? Folks with the understanding and the orientation to facilities management, facilities use, and facilities maintenance. Could be custodians, could be maintenance workers. Folks with that kind of experience and background, um, there will be a change in their focus, because the general wear and tear that occurs on a building will change when you reduce the number of feet that step on campus, right? By taking students off campus, but they'll still have a focus in maintaining a healthy work environment, right? So I think from a personnel standpoint, we'll be well placed. We're working hard on the personal protective equipment and the health and sanitation supplies. We do have a supply of those things. I haven't heard of challenges as far as making sure we have the right cleaning and disinfectant products. We did struggle for a time to order replenishment supplies for hand sanitizer, but we have secured several sources for that. So at this point, I know we're ready for the phase we're in. As we grow forward to welcoming students back, that will change things. And we're working on ordering thousands and thousands of child-sized disposable masks. And we're going to expect that students come to campus with the mask from home, because they are under an order from the governor and under an order from the public health officer in Santa Barbara to wear a mask when they go to a public place. But anyone who forgets to bring a mask with them will be provided one. We're not going to send a student home because they don't bring a mask, nor a staff person. But there are 2 orders in place that require it. So we're expecting people already have masks that they're wearing to work, or they're wearing to the grocery store, or they're wearing when they walk into public. So time is another thing we need, in addition to just having the supplies, is to make sure that we have access to the building and that we build in the routines for disinfection, sanitation, in particular on common touch surfaces. Our staff have already experienced, many of our staff were present when SARS came through and H1N1 came through. The procedures are essentially the same. This is a new virus to the world. It is more contagious. And it's gotten greater attention and it has greater health impacts, but the process is still the same. Right? The materials that kill this virus and are effective on this virus are the same, and the procedures are the same. But we will be more intensive with it, right? Definitely.
Now, what we saw today, how is that going to look? Of course, I guess with distance learning, it's not as critical. But are we going to be able to occupy if we had to by the August start date?
I heard differently that we wouldn't be able to. I think that it's likely there may be items out on the punch list still. You heard Mr. Cavazos talk about the punch list, that they were working on that. The architect was working on that and preparing to give it to the district to review, to then provide to the contractor. So there are likely to be items remaining on that list.
And you've got some changes too, I'm sure.
We'll see. Yeah. We haven't, as the owner, we have not directed a great deal of changes.
Well, at our last meeting, or one of our meetings, maybe it was the furniture meeting I went to. No, it was the last meeting. We were 40 days behind.
Correct. So
how we managed that?
The full story on that was there were several rain days that remained in the schedule, and there were significant components of the work that were behind schedule related to changes that came from the DSA field engineer. And so as the likelihood of rain passed, and as those items that had been hanging on the schedule for several weeks and months related to changes from the field engineer, as those revisions got placed into service in construction, then those late days, if you will, that were on the schedule also disappeared. So we went from like a -40 to a +10.
Oh,
The
wow.
way the owner described it to me, the general contractor described it to me.
Great.
So it just had to do with the way they do their construction scheduling, and as they were implementing those corrections and revisions, he described that would be the change. There are still a lot of things that are hanging out there. There are impacts of COVID-19 that have hit some of our providers, right, subcontractors, that are impacting their ability to deliver. And so we're just working with those as they come up, the contractor and
Yeah.
district.
Do you have a final inspection and a sign off to provide the okay from the state scheduled?
Scheduled isn't a word that I would use for it. There's a process for it. We have an inspector of record on the job who works for DSA, and the district pays for his time, and he won't sign off on the project as complete until everything that is on the drawings is included in the construction on the site. And that will take the time it takes. That will require the punch list to be fully resolved. Any revisions or deviations from the drawings will have to be either documented in a change order that gets approved by DSA, or addressed in a construction change directive or some other form of documentation.
But the bottom line is no child can enter until he signs off on the last nitpick.
No, that's
No?
not true. Actually,
okay.
You can occupy the building before the inspector of record gives you final sign off. It's not necessarily a best practice.
Yeah.
And it's something that the district has in its experience related to the turnkey projects that were around in the 2000s. Right, they walked away without DSA sign off, went bankrupt and stopped construction.
Yes.
We've had thousands of students who needed to go to school in those buildings, and the architect we were using at the time reviewed the construction, its status, and the plans that were used to install them, and told us that students would be safe in using those buildings. And so we allowed those students to occupy. And then as time passed, worked through clearing up the deviation notices and construction change directive documentation that was necessary. And it took 10, 12 years to get through it all. I'm exaggerating when I say 12, but it was between 8 and 10.
It was a long time.
It was a long time. It was the
So
longest
certainly don't want to repeat that experience.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
I
yeah,
saw
I've been
our friend
smart,
in
but
a
I can
store
learn
recently.
lessons. What's that, Nancy?
I saw our friend in a store recently.
Nice.
Yeah, and that flooded back all those memories, you know?
Mm-hmm. I am fondly reminded of those times and speak of them. I do with joy and reverence. I certainly a unique time in my career and my time, and a lot of learning that got to go on.
Oh yes, yeah, something you will never forget. Gary, you missed a real fun time.
Is this morning?
No.
In the
This is
past.
several years back.
Years ago? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I kind of gathered that already, yeah.
yeah.
Good times.
We had quite a contentious situation. Any rate, let's not go there again.
Nope.
All right.
Nope.
Okay. I like to continue seeing some reports. some of those pictures that you continue to send to us. I'm amazed at the progress we've made. And in those pictures that you were sending, some of the months you could see those new apartments going up.
Mhm.
And that's just amazing to me how quickly they were able to put up those without the state Department of Architecture on their backs.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about apartment building is that it's the planning department of the city that oversees that work. And so, you know, the state architect doesn't get in the way and doesn't have a say.
No.
So,
How many, let me just go back a minute. How many students are at Battles now?
I don't have the number in front of me. I'm going to give you a number that is
A guesstimate.
probably close, but I want to say 800, 850.
And it was built for how many?
Well, I think in its original construction, it was probably built for 600 or 650.
Yeah. So
And
we're
it's
going to be
high
able
as
to at
about
least
9.
bring them back down quite a bit, aren't we?
Yeah, this will reduce their enrollment quite a bit.
Good. Well, that's the whole point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to
It's a
balance that
beautiful
enrollment.
facility. And Gary, looking at it today, it's amazing to see the size of the classrooms and the functionality that's been built into them. I had to leave for another appointment this morning, unfortunately, so I didn't get to see all of it. Gary, Matt, when is this next opportunity to do a walkthrough?
It is 9 o'clock on Thursday, I believe.
Next Thursday, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay, if I were to attend,
Sure.
okay? What's the date? That'd be the 30th. I could do the 30th, yeah. Okay. If it's okay with you, can you put me down on that too? I'd really like to see the place.
You got it.
Super, thank you.
I hope you have some more time to spend walking around.
Yes, I was sorry I had to leave today.
No problem. No
And
problem.
maybe, Gary, can you make it that day?
I'm already scheduled.
Super, good. Yeah, it's impressive. For 45 million, we should have been impressed, and I think we were.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Only it's not just 45.
Yeah, right. No, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful facility. And,
Yes, it
and
is.
it's
And
gonna
I
be-
was impressed with the principal.
Yes, Ms. Lathery is amazing. She's well selected.
What's her name?
Colleen Lathery is the principal.
Got it.
I didn't get much time to interact with the vice principal, but she was there and seemed very interested. And
Yeah,
go
they're
get
gonna
her.
make a great team.
Yes.
A great
Super.
team. Yep.
All right. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Can I ask a couple questions here? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely.
So I just want to confirm, August 13th is the official day it opens and the Santa Maria Bonita. Is that correct, August 13th?
I want to make sure that that's what our instructional calendar says. And I'll give you a couple dates. That's not the right one. All right, so teachers, it looks like, will report on August the 10th. Students would report on August the 13th.
Okay, so when again is the estimated date when construction will be completed?
They committed at the beginning to hand us the keys on July the 3rd. I'm sorry, August the 3rd.
August the
Yeah.
3rd. That's confusing. Okay,
Yeah,
so,
sorry about that.
so you believe that it will be completed on August the 3rd? Is that I mean, at this date, is that realistic?
So I believe we will be provided access to the classrooms.
It won't be completed, right? You were going to work on.
We'll still be working. There'll still be work to do.
But when will they be officially finished?
Well, that's going to have to be before the 10th.
Of August?
I believe there will still be punch list items left, but they'll need to be moving off the site.
Let me just ask with all, and you guys are, and you are in an industry that's in the news every day, and Jessica. Are parents calling up about the school and the social distance guidelines? And well, I just want to ask you, would you have any knowledge of what their concerns are with, with what's going on with the state, with COVID-19, how that's going to impact the new facility? Have there been any questions or concerns of theirs that you hear somewhat regularly?
I think right now the folks we're hearing from are staff and a few community members certainly, but we really do hear both sides of the coin from the community members. We hear from our community members that we trust the district and we want our students back in school, and we hear different messages from that. But we, as I mentioned, we did take our reentry plan to the school board last night, and we talked about what our procedures will be as far as setting up guidelines for social distancing and appropriate hygiene for students. So all that stuff is going to be communicated and re-communicated to parents before we open up to students. So we haven't necessarily gotten, the group of parents who are like, that's it, we're not coming, you can't make us. That hasn't been a dominant message. I want to say that we hear all kinds of voices and all kinds of concerns on both sides of the issue.
I just want to ask, because I'm one that believes this is going to be our first pandemic. I believe there'll be more. So I just, in light of that, since you mentioned that there are some social distancing issues with the restrooms and the non-school bus and a few other items, and since this is a brand new school, in anticipation of future pandemics, is it worth it at this point, since it's brand new, to do any additional construction in areas where you're going to have issues with social distance guidelines? So you're prepped, since the building isn't quite, you haven't been handed the keys yet. So you have another pandemic in 6 years, it's already ready. Is there any conversation about that?
Not at this point. To introduce a change to mechanical systems or to any structural systems in the project are going to be really difficult to implement. And I think that, a lot of the changes that we would need to make to this campus would need to be similar to other campuses. Right? We would need to consider all 21 campuses we have in making those changes to address social distancing, because it's not just going to be one school. Now, the next schools that are built, yeah, probably so, right? We're probably talking wider doorways, probably talking more restrooms with smaller fixture counts, things like that. But, one of the things that just boggles my mind about this is at many, many schools, one of the most important features, and this one is no exception, is the library. It's central to learning. Libraries are common areas. I can't send 100 students through there in a day to select books. That process is going to have to change, right? So that whole thing, if it's determined that this is common enough for us to plan for when we're doing design, that concept is going to have to change for sure. And likely, rather than get programmed into some kind of brick and mortar design, it will likely instead be some kind of online, right, audiobook or digital book distribution rather than a brick and mortar library.
Yeah, I'm kind of believing you're going to be distance learning because, I don't know if you're aware of this, Nancy, but the Santa Barbara County Public Health and Marion Medical were talking to the Santa Maria City Council 2 weeks ago. And we have we're on a peak now with COVID-19. I think there's about 60 people in Marion now that have it. 73% of the cases, according to the county, were north of Betteravia and west of Broadway, which is not this school. That's what is going to affect, I would imagine, obviously some of the other Bonita schools. And and Marion said that their cases per day positivity increasing. The last 2 weeks of June went up to 6.5 a day from, it was 4 something before that. So, and we're fearful that because of the 4th of July, it's going to go higher. So Santa Maria right now is sort of in the hot zone for COVID-19.
Yeah,
Sure.
we have some cultural issues that certainly lend themselves to higher numbers. I understand that Marion had 22 on respirators yesterday. That's a lot of people. I don't see it getting a lot better in Northwest Santa Maria for a long time. We've got high density and it's unfortunate, but that's the situation. Frankly, I think that this new school is going to have a lot of time to do their punch list before we put any kids in that school. And that's unfortunate. The question I had for you, Matt, is what about these children and their electronic access to learning? How is that situation?
So as best we can, we have addressed that. There were free plans available through Comcast that turned to discount plans this year. That I believe the rates are $10 a month. We provided hotspots, hundreds and hundreds of them, where we could. And then we're also working on a project to try and expand our wireless access, a wireless network out across the city to the greatest extent possible, using government buildings or district buildings, other points that are high where we can put an antenna and broadcast from.
Yeah.
That's obviously that takes time, and that takes design, and that takes a lot of cooperation. But that's something we've been working on for a while, so we can provide our own access to our students and the devices that we've provided them.
Did most of your student body have access to electronic learning?
Yes. Yeah, we put out 16,000, 17,000 devices. Every student, as far as we could get to them, every one of them had a device, a Chromebook or an iPad.
Wow, that's great.
It was amazing. It
Yeah,
was amazing.
surprising to me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was a lot of work, and it took a lot of cooperation, but we did get devices into the hands of every student that we possibly could.
And now we're working on shoring up the Wi-Fi experience. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Connectivity.
Mm-hmm. It's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, but there's some kids that just, yeah, we all know that we learn different ways. Some kids don't learn well in the classroom situation, but they learn well on the computer, and of course, vice versa. Some learn by hearing, some by seeing, and some by doing, but it's tough when you don't have some options.
There's no doubt the most effective learning environment is a teacher in their classroom directly with their students.
Yeah.
And the, however we can best translate what's available to us now, which is distance learning, into an environment that is just as rigorous as that classroom experience. That's what we're required by the governor and by the state legislature to provide.
What format are you doing? Is it a Zoom type format?
It's everything. It's centered around Google Classroom, but it's Zoom and webinar and video, and I mean it's a multitude. There's a lot of resources on what we're providing on our district website.
Oh, okay, I haven't been there.
Grab and see
I'll
a
have
lot.
to take a look.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
impressive.
have grandkids here from Colorado,
Mhm.
and they had a Zoom just for socialization between the students.
Nice.
They would get together on odd days of the week or varying days of the week. One group would be here and another on a different day, and they would just do it for socialization and reinforcement of some of the things that they were studying. Wasn't a formal classroom, but more the addressing the social needs, and that's a big part of school.
For sure.
So, okay.
And
Anybody
just
else?
to ask, the name of the school, there were so many submissions, it came down to Bill Libin. Any background on that at all you can share with?
I mean, I was an observer in the meetings, not the committee meetings, but the board meetings. And they had great choices. They had extensive debate and public input, and they landed on Bill Libin Elementary. They had good choices to make. And, you know, that's where the board landed, was Bill Libin Elementary.
Well, I was expecting a different name to be on it, but that's all right.
Yep.
Gary, you have anything else?
I'm okay, thank you. I look forward to the meeting next Thursday. I'll see you there, of course. Outstanding.
Sure.
Sounds good, Gary. Thank you.
That'll be nice. Looking forward to it.
Jessica, thank you for your hard work. Sorry, I missed that link, and thanks
Jessica.
for sending it again.
Thanks for the
Yeah.
smile there,
Jessica.
Jessica. Hey there.
Thank you.
Aw, thank
All right.
you.
All right,
Make a motion to call the meeting to adjourn?
absolutely. I've got to get my dinner done and turn the Dodgers on.
And do you have a
So-
second on that?
Yeah,
Okay, adjourned.
Perfect.
adjourn. Thank
Thank you
you.
all very much. Awesome.
Thank
We'll
you,
see
Matt,
next
as
week.
always. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, and